Hello and welcome back to Travel Visionaries, the podcast about the future of the travel industry brought to you by the European Sustainable Hospitality Club. Whether you are a hotel manager, travel agent, tourist guide, or student, you're sure to pick up tidbits of actionable advice when you listen to Travel Visionaries. Join the conversation along with Maribel Esparcia and Dan Pontarlier with the most knowledgeable people that are part of our industry. Let's
Thank you
go!
very much, Victoria. It's a pleasure to have you in the Travel Visionary Show, where you can share your insights on how you think travel should be as we build back, hopefully better from this pandemic. As we have 3 weeks to 2021, and things are, I guess, maybe getting better or trying to get better as the industry is evolving with new partnerships, new ways to work. And we hope that sustainability is the North Star, I guess. We would love to have your insights on how you see that happening or within your area of expertise. I know you are an expert and you've been a chef, now also supporting community-based tourism and creating alliances to kind of foster that community spirit somehow. So we would love to know what are your insights on how are things moving, and you hope to see that things moving in the industry.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's a great topic that I'm really passionate about and happy to be sharing with you. I think that we can all agree that the way that tourism has been going in a lot of nations has unfortunately started to crush the local communities that lived there and help to build up a lot of these places and make them tourist destinations in the first place. For instance, where I'm based out of in Lisbon, Portugal, in the historic center, people were traveling here because they wanted that small town feel. They wanted to see old mamas in the balconies and hanging up their laundry. And unfortunately, as tourism got so large over the years, it really priced a lot of the locals out of the historic center. And with every new coffee shop that goes up in every new Airbnb, it really took away a lot of that community aspect that led people to start traveling to those destinations in the first place. So for me, what I'm really focused on is trying to help promote a slower tourism. I think that tourism is still very important, and it's one of the best educational tools that we as human beings can employ to understand and build and grow in cross-culturalism. But we have to find a way of being smarter and safer about that. So what I'm really working on is trying to help build partnerships and alliances that within the community with existing businesses and even activities that people really hadn't thought were business opportunities, so that when people do travel to these areas, they're really focusing on learning the community and spending their money in smarter ways that are supporting the actual infrastructure of the community instead of destroying it.
Absolutely agree. I would love to know what are your maybe advice or suggestions for more the operational side. So for those of us that maybe run a hotel or restaurant, how we can really manage things in a more conscious way, maybe supporting, as you said very well, businesses that we never thought we would be supporting or doing alliances and partnerships, but also on the daily basis, what are the activities that you might think or suggest that are good practices for supporting the communities, but also to be sustainable or more conscious about our operations, right?
Absolutely. I think the first and easiest step that both hotels and restaurants can take is to source their products more locally. And that means it might mean a few more suppliers than maybe they were used to, but it's very simple to get your vegetables from a local farmer. And that small amount of vegetable that you might purchase, whether that's from a local farmer or from someone producing, a CSA type of box or an organic box, that has such an impact. So not only is that bringing money to a person or an organization directly in the community, but it's also reducing the carbon footprint of the transportation impact and the pollution that goes along with importing things. It's helping to support food sustainability and seasonality, because as you're buying from the local producers, you can target your menu. Chefs can target their menu. Hospitality and hotel organizations can start to target their menus that are focused more on seasonality, so that we can, in the long run, that will help with crop rotation and will help with the health of the soil, and a reduction in pesticides. Because if you're trying to grow something that's
Everything is
local and
benefits,
native,
all benefits.
yeah, all across the board. So I think that's the easiest way that our hospitality partners can really make a difference. Another way is to look at your practices in your water consumption in the hotels, especially looking at how often do the linens need to be changed, or the bath towels need to be changed and washed. And that's a tricky one here with this year that we have with COVID, because we're all focused on cleaning everything as much as we can and making sure that we're creating safe environments for our customers. And so I think that there is, just still a way that we can look at it. And maybe the way that they're doing it is the best and only way, but just to have that in the forefront of our mind and say, what is my water consumption? Do I need to leave the water running, for 3 hours on this one thing? Or if you do, is there a way that you can then capture that gray water or that, lightly soiled water from, say, rinsing the rice in the restaurant? Can that then be used to water the small herb garden that you have outside of the restaurant? All of those little things. And then also really tracking and managing your takeaway containers is a really big one that we have seen. I think that as a sustainable industry, we did so well in trying to reduce our single-use plastics, and then bam, COVID hit, and immediately everything went to takeout in plastic bags, double wrapped and packaged in another box and dropped on the doorstep. So I try and work with companies to look at what their needs are for takeaway containers, and then see there's a lot of really great options on the market right now that are more sustainable, that are either, whether that's corn-based packaging or sugarcane-based packaging, even cardboard, not getting something that's coated in a plastic if you don't have to, depending on what your menu items are. So there's a lot of little ways that I think that even small restaurants and large restaurants, large hotels can look at their everyday practices and make impactful changes.
Absolutely agree. And I want to go back for a second what you said at the beginning. So it's more about that mindset, the slow travel mindset, right? And how we do that transition. So from the leadership perspective, I know that many times it really depends from the ownership or managers or directors to make those changes happen, because we know the solutions, we have tools, right? So I don't know if you've managed teams and and what would be your suggestion here? So as a leader, what do you think we can do to that really make that mindset shift really and make travel more conscious for the traveler perspective, but also from the operational perspective, so from both sides, from the business but also from the consumer perspective, I guess?
Well, two parts. I think one, from the organizational side, it is, first and foremost, a financial decision. Really, in the long run, and most of the time in the short run, it costs less money to be sustainable. In the short run, it costs less in packaging, it costs less in waste management and actually carting off all of your trash that you're producing from your practices. But in the long run, there is no money if there is no tourism, and there is no tourism if global warming and climate change continue to create issues like this pandemic that we're seeing here, and wildfires, and the pollution and destruction of our waterways, the coral reef going down, all of these things that are leading people to travel to your beautiful resort hotel in the first place. It is in your financial best interest to protect those environmental resources, because that is what people are coming to see. No one is coming to a beautiful beach resort to lay on the sand and look at a bunch of plastic in the ocean. That's not sexy. So it's in the organization's best interest financially, I think, to
take action, right?
To take action now, to think of the longevity of their business. And I think that once you start to look at the longevity of your business and how you can protect your financial interests, then you start to make those downstream decisions. And when your employees see, you know, as a chef, for instance, I'll use some examples. When I was the executive chef in a large scale kitchen, and we would have to cut up an entire case of zucchini, right? There would be a cook who's chopping off the ends of the zucchini, and they might leave that much. But when you add up all of those inches or centimeters of zucchini, you might have this much left at the end of one box. So showing them that if you could be cleaner in the very beginning to prevent the food waste and really use the food that you have, economically, smartly, then the people, the chefs, the lower cooks in my kitchen would see that it's important to me, and I'm taking the time to make sure that I cut this close to the stem, not this close to the stem. And then the cooks would see that if you cut more carefully, it is less work because then you have more usable product. So there's leading by example and showing them how to do these very small things that prevent the waste from happening.
That's a very good question, because we've discussed about the environmental impacts, but the food waste is really one of the major issues, and the discussion between the consuming meat or plant-based food, like this discussion that is now, because that impacts also, it causes deforestation and other environmental issues. But it's also great what you said, because you're saying that you need to lead by example. So from the food waste prevention perspective, what do you think is more effective? Because we know there are softwares, there are things. So what are the best practices to really prevent that food waste of happening? Maybe you experience doing training to your teams is the best way. I don't know. How do you see the best way to make that a reality?
I think there's a couple of different ways. I mean, there's several ways to look at it, right? I think leading by example and teaching your team how, taking the few moments to show your team in the kitchen how to properly chop the vegetables. But there's also having the features in place to know how to sort the vegetables. You know, for instance, we never threw anything away without boiling it first for a vegetable stock. So anything, your cauliflower ends, your broccoli stems, your onion, your garlic skins, your carrot peelings, all of those things make delicious broth that you can then use to cook your other dishes, your rice dishes, your soups, that in the end make the food more flavorful. So it's going to make the restaurant's food more delicious, but that prevents the waste from happening from the beginning. On the more of a management side for the chefs in the kitchen, I think that it's important to look at the way that you're menuing items. And, you know, that's the seasonality, making sure that you're getting things in season. That's looking at what the prospective customer number is going to be, so that you're not overproducing in the first place. And thinking about, you know, I would always think about when I'm menuing an item. I had a restaurant that the menu changed every day, you know, which is very challenging one way, but it's also leaves a lot of room for creativity to kind of turn these items into other things. And so when I would be thinking of, this is, I'm going to do a roast chicken, you know, for a dish, I would think of, okay, so the first dish is going to be roast chicken, but the second dish is when I butcher those chickens to serve, the customer is going to get the beautiful meat portion, but all of those bones, those I'm already thinking, those are going to go and be the broth base. I'm going to boil those bones and I'm going to make a really nice meat broth. And then that's going to go in and be the base of my chicken pot pie for the next dish, or my soups for the next day. So I'm already thinking ahead about how I'm going to use all of the animal or all of the vegetable, all of the product, really, because everything you throw away in a kitchen, every chef will tell you, everything you throw away, you are throwing away money.
That's another thing, the impact on your P&L and your budgeting, if you have to budget for
That's it. I think it all comes, I keep going back to it's
financial
not
things.
just about, being a hippie tree hugger. It's about, really from businesses looking at this from a financial standpoint. This is, I
Yes.
would tell my cooks, every time you scrape something into the trash, you're scraping your next raise into the trash. If there's no more money,
That's a good, very
it,
good point.
it affects all of us. So I think that's a really good way. And then what we would also do is we would once a week, everything that was what we considered actual waste, we would weigh the waste, and so that we could just keep track of it. And I think once you start to keep track of it and just weigh it and look at that month over month and see how much money in really bulk food you're throwing away, then you start to think about, okay, well, what else can I do with this? So what we ended up doing is creating a program, which I think can be done in any community around the world. Someone has pigs, someone has cows. So we ended up sending our vegetable organic food waste to a local dairy farm. Those that got turned into some of the food for the cows, and that those cows ate some of that vegetable waste, and then we bought the milk and the yogurt and the cheese from that local dairy.
That's
So
great. It's like a system. It's a system, and then
it is.
it's a closed approach. So it never goes anything really into waste to the land.
Mhm. It's all about the circular economy. Really, it's a circular economy. When you think about how a product starts and its full life cycle, you
Right,
can
yeah,
really start to track the financial impact and really start to have a lasting, sustainable impact on the entire industry. And
indeed.
we're way more connected than we think we are.
And I think that's
In
pushing us also more, no? Even now, the
Mhm.
situation is pushing us to, or forcing us, or open our eyes to even encourage us to do that even more, to
It's an
support.
opportunity.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. That leads me to that question. So, for the community perspective, I think that is a great example of how hotels and restaurants can really support local communities. But if
Mhm.
I'm thinking of a resort, or maybe in a different environment, I don't know how we can really change this approach of fast tourism and change it to slow tourism, and kind of understand the locals' needs, kind of taking the time to maybe, I don't know, go to the local, to buy some gifts for your trip, but doing locally, not doing it on a big mall or something like that. Like, what do you think, or what are your suggestions for that more community support, I guess, or what you have experienced or seen that is working? But I think for that restaurant is a great example of how, with the food waste, you can create a community support. So everything
Mhm.
is linked at the end of the day, right? But in other activities or initiatives that we can take as hoteliers or as a restaurant owners, what are your suggestions or ideas that we can also do?
Yeah, it makes me think of a couple of things that we've been able to work with lately. So let's say, it kind of goes back to what I was saying, that we're all a lot more connected than we think we are. So let's take, for instance, I will consult with a co-working space, a co-working, co-living space, and they might need to, they just serve coffee, right? They're not in the restaurant business, but they have coffee for their customers that come in. So instead of just going on Amazon and buying whatever coffee beans are available at whatever big store, go into your community and find that coffee shop that's roasting their own beans. Every community has one. Coffee is everywhere. So then help to find them a local coffee roaster. And so that local coffee roaster starts to sell back to the co-working space. But the co-working space is more on the business side, and there's a lot of different people that work in their offices. So they actually had connections with a print shop, and a print shop that used, more plant-based inks in a more sustainable business practice of printing. So then we were able to connect that print shop back to the coffee roasters, to help them to print the labels and the packaging for their coffee beans in using a sustainable resource. Now, normally you wouldn't think that a co-working space and a coffee bean roaster had a
Well,
lot in
anything.
common,
That's great.
but that's where I try and come in and maybe by looking at it from a more top-down approach and a more
Holistic
broader
view.
range.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm looking at not just, oh, well, I need, cups. It's like, okay, well, what else do you need? And I just know so many different people in um, different avenues, different, fields. So I'm able to see, for instance, another co-working space on the Azores that was new, opened up during COVID, was having a really hard time. And there's not a ton to do on the Azores. There's a lot of hiking and there's some surfing, but what I was able to find is there's a local goat farmer, really small production, goat farm. But what he was doing is trying to create an opportunity where people could come and tour the goat farm and then have a traditional Portuguese country breakfast on the farm.
Nice.
So we were able to connect this goat farm that doesn't really have a huge presence yet, doesn't have a lot of customers, directly with the accommodation space so that they were promoting when their guests come to the place, they could promote
nice.
the
So
goat
this is a
farm.
very good experience for a
Yeah,
guest.
and this is something that can be scaled up for larger. Some other examples, I think that really support this slower tourism is in your accommodation. If you have a hotel or a guest house, take the time to go out into your community and meet the people who are creating experiences, whether that's hiking or kayaking or breakfast with goats or a paint and wine situation, but have the information and create a connection so that you can give your guests something to do when they come. Give them an option to choose that is the right one. People want to spend their money in a good way. But if you're able to give them an option when they come, then they're not just going on Airbnb and looking for something where one of those other platforms is going to take a cut away from the producer's revenue, which is probably already very small to begin with and is limited even more now because there's only a few travelers coming and going. Another really great way that larger hotels can really have an impact is by supporting local artists and using the local artists' artwork, in their hotels, in the lobby, in the rooms, and kind of being able to use it as decoration, sometimes for maybe a lesser fee or sometimes even for free in the partnership, and then allowing your guests to buy those pieces of art directly from the wall in a hotel that they stay in. How many times have we gone to a hotel and been like, I
and you
really
saw like,
love
yes, and I'm like, wow,
this basket,
yes,
or this coffee pot, and you're like, I want
yes.
this. If it's from a local producer and it's not some mass created thing that the customer can't get ever again, then you have an opportunity to create revenue for your hotel by selling those local items in your establishment. And the local artist gets exposure that they wouldn't have normally gotten by being in your hotel as a decoration or some part of your decor. And then all of your it just goes to a more holistic approach to your hotel when you can tell your guests everything here is not from IKEA, everything here is actually from
artists. Yes.
It's from local artists. These chairs are made in this country, or these blankets are made by somebody's grandma. I want to buy that blanket that's made by somebody's grandma. We all fall for that
history
love.
and the story behind the piece. Absolutely.
I think now more than ever, the people that are traveling and people spending money do care about the impact that purchase is having on the environment, on whether or not the people who made that product are paid a living wage. We're thinking about fast fashion, or we're thinking about the impact of plane travel. And I think if we can just try and create alliances within our community that gives people the opportunity to make the right decision, I think that people will.
That's amazing insight. I mean, I would take many ideas from here. If I was a hotel, if I needed to, maybe have a new concept, or if I already have a concept or impersonal properties that we sometimes find, and they're like one more. So how you can change your story by supporting local communities. That's brilliant. So I love the insight. If you would
Yeah.
like us to share like your idea as a visionary, how you see things to end this and not take all your day, all your afternoon. We would love to have like yours a sentence or something that you want us to kind of also share with our community. How you see travel forward, and what do you think is the best way forward for us as a sector or as an industry?
My vision for tourism as we blossom out of this pandemic opportunity is to travel with a purpose, and to travel with a sense of learning about the place that you're going to, and engaging with the people that live there, and knowing that when you do travel, it had a positive impact, not a negative impact. And I think that there are some really great ways that we can all engage in that. But as a traveler, think about when you're planning, even if it's that spring break in Cancun, just remember that there's a whole other side of Cancun than just that one bar to get drunk at. There is an entire country's worth of history that is there, and a lot of times the people that are in that community want to share that with you. They want to share their authentic experience, their life experience, what they love about their community and their country. And if you're just open and receptive to seeking that out and to listening, it's going to enhance the travel experience so much more.
Absolutely. I can't add anything else to that. I love your the way you say it, as we blossom from this pandemic, and
Yeah,
I do think we will do so if we have professionals like you in the industry. So thank you very
thank
much.
you.
We will leave it here for the show today. Thank you.
Thanks so much for giving me the opportunity. It was great to chat with you and share with your viewers.
Thank you.